How do we start this off?
I think we just started this.
All right, I think you're right. Welcome, everybody. This is the Mo Stop Mo podcast, and I am happy to be here with my technical producer of our last festival, Edwin Ruiz of Mondo Machine. So thanks, Edwin, for joining me here. I'm David Rocco Facchini. The purpose of this podcast right now is basically kind of talking about the journey of the cookie cutter. The cookie cutter is our 8-minute short, our maiden ship animation of Mo Stop Mo to kind of test its feasibility. And we have some exciting things on the horizon with Mo Stop Mo that I can't quite share yet. But before we get to that, which won't be in this podcast per se, I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of go into the journey of the cookie cutter. Now, an exciting thing that just happened for Mo Stop Mo and for the cookie cutter is we just got back from Cannes, France, where the cookie cutter was showcased and invited to be a part of such an amazing festival that isn't necessarily animation oriented, but we were able to get in as a part of being accepted through 2 Canadian festivals. One was called Taffy, and that's based in Toronto, and one was called Animes, which was based in Montreal. Edwin, fortunately, was able to come along with me. This was like very fast in throwing this all together, like the planning, the invite, the back work, the planning, and kind of getting this all together. So there's a lot of bouncing around here, but maybe, Edwin, you could talk a little bit about your experience when I kind of reached out to you. I found out about it, but reaching out to you and I've been on the road for the last year in a van, and I've been in touch with Edwin infrequently. And when I heard about it, I was trying to figure out who's going to come with me to this festival that would also be able to come with me efficiently where I was located. There's a lot of moving parts here, but I reached out to Edwin at one point, and Edwin is like one of the busiest guys I know. He's a director and producer, and he's doing things all the time. And luckily, it worked out.
It worked out. It was one of these like.
Oh, by the way, I'm gonna. First off, can I just do this?
Yeah, let's cheers the can.
Yeah, we're gonna
cans to can.
Cans to can. Cheers. So anyway, tell me what was going on. I reached out to you.
You reached out to me. I think it was a Sunday. Possibly a Sunday.
I lose track of time on the road.
I feel it was Sunday. But anyway.
You're more of the working man who has a schedule, so you would probably know better.
So you told me about this great opportunity, the fact that the film's going to be involved with this festival. And you tell me of all of this wonderful stuff happening, and then at the very end, you're just like, and if you'd like to come, it'd be great to have you. And I clearly remember thinking, I don't think I have time to make it. I'm speaking at a conference in Orlando. There's all of these pieces moving, and I think within 24 hours, I got back to you and I was like, yes, and I think we have this incredible flight option,
right,
to not only take us there and bring us back, but at a lower rate, be able to stop by Amsterdam for a quick
12-hour layover.
12-hour layover at night.
Yeah.
Which turned into like its own like really fun adventure.
Yeah, it was really kind of, outside, I want to address that first. It's like, again, another podcast coming up is going to be a little bit about that 12-hour layover in Amsterdam, because not only did you meet somebody on the plane who was a stop motion director while we were flying to Amsterdam, and his name was like Bruno something.
Bruno. We'll just
Bruno. It was Bruno. And
we talk about Bruno here.
yeah. But we also got to spend a couple hours with Joren and 5 a.m. Studios in Amsterdam. He gave us a studio tour. We have like a nice candid conversation about his studio, their newest upcoming production. So that pay attention to in our next podcast, to be mounted TBD. I mean, this is mounted to TBD as well. But yeah, soon. There you go. That's the producer. Then you.
So yeah, we went through this whole planning of how to get there, how to get back, and
you kind of you made the 12-hour layover. You're like, what about this flight? 12-hour layover. And I was just like, yeah, that sounds great. You actually kind of did. I threw it in your court, and then you as a doer, you got it done. You got the flight chosen, and we just basically were like, all right, time to throw some money at this thing.
Yeah. So. It's like, what is the most adventurous way of getting there, and let's lock that before we move forward.
Right.
And quickly from there, we did some level of planning, and then we got on a plane, and then we arrived, and so much learning of how a festival of the caliber
and magnitude.
That
was enormous.
Like in most cities, you have festivals and they happen in a neighborhood or in some sort of like more condensed area. This is a festival that's happening in an entire city.
Yeah.
Is that the right term?
Yeah,
city?
yeah. I mean, basically this Riviera, French Riviera city, which is, I mean, it's sizable. It's everything is dedicated to this festival in every way. I mean, one of the funny stories is the bow tie, which we'll get to in a minute, of even the little shopkeepers have like a little, like the connection of what kind of bow ties are allowed to be sold. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, it was just like going through the streets and seeing everything dedicated to the festival, and it's so busy, and just everyone wearing a tux or a dress.
I mean, it feels like the entire city is...
There's not one entity that's not dedicated to that festival when you're there.
Absolutely.
That was like you see Chicago and they have like, the International Fest, the Underground Fest, all these different things. But it's like you said, it's here. This is like everywhere. Utilizing every square inch, land and sea, boat parties, everything. Everywhere you turn, it is Cannes
and
Film Fest.
And it's this wonderful, like there's these theaters that are close to the main headquarters, or what I'll call headquarters. But then there's this theater that we spent, half day at. That was,
25-minute bus ride or something. 20-minute bus ride, yeah.
Which was beautiful.
Yes, right, of course.
And
all the buses are free during the festival, so you just
show your badge.
You have your creds, and you could, it's like a key to the city, which was kind of nice. Yeah.
But yeah, it was not only getting to the festival, but it was also all these little pieces that just kept kind of elevating it on our route there. I'm just going to jump into our route there.
Do it.
Having this, once again, having little detours in it. Stopping in New York for our layover.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was a really fun thing. So again, Edwin's a busy guy. He's got a lot of moving pieces, and he's got a lot of people with a lot of expectations. So you were working when I started vacationing. And luckily we had a layover at JFK Airport. And if you go to JFK and do not have an opportunity to visit the TWA terminal, that's turned museum and also, surprisingly and happily enough, cocktail lounge, you gotta go, you gotta make a trip there. I mean, it's another project that I am working on for going forward with Mo Stop Mo is this monkey and car that I've been working on with Mike Owens and Wendy Owens and Greg Schreier, and Edwin's welcome to be a part of this. We were just discussing more of this. based in the 50s. So this JFK terminal, I'm like clicking away because it's like mid-century modern beauty. And if you needed anything to take you out of reality and tell you you're in a new place, even a new era, it was that airport.
That so,
and that was actually kind of your transition to vacation, because you were like busy up until pretty much that point, even at the terminal.
Yes, it was work, and then while in this space, it's like, how much work can I still realistically continue to do? And then we quickly get into this space is not only, what era would you call that specifically? 19.
It was like the 50s. It's like the 50s through like mid to late 50s, early 60s. I don't know when they decommissioned TWA. I was alive when I think that happened, but this airport is like definitely set in time.
It's not only beautiful as a timepiece, but it is meticulously cared for. So it is this wonderful time machine into like a different era, with these with just design that you just don't stumble across in any sort of modern landscape. And so it was this wonderful pull from reality that then was followed by their built-in museum that further is like, wow, this place is cool, to someone being nice enough to say, hey, and there is a plane in that is stationed permanently that is a cocktail lounge.
Come 4 p.m.
Come 4 p.m.
I mean, could we have had a better layover timing as well? Because we got enough time to look at it. You had enough time to get your work done right in time to go onto this plane, get cocktails, check it out, and really enjoy the atmosphere.
And the weather was superb.
The weather was
perfect
amazing.
weather.
Yeah, that was such a surprise, and the people were super friendly. It's a museum. It is a historic landmark. They have vehicles of all kinds in there. Pretty good, yet pretty expensive cocktails. But, hey.
Very good in a very memorable location.
Right.
Which, cocktails are usually associated to, as the price goes up, how memorable the location is.
It goes down?
No, it goes
Depending
up.
how many cocktails you have.
Yeah. There's a law of diminishing returns with some factors. But the location was, being able to walk up the stairs onto a plane, have a drink it there, or walk down with your drink to drink it and at the runway.
Yeah.
That's not an everyday occurrance. I don't know about you. Maybe you get to private jet and sit on the tarmac.
You know me, right? Well, it's funny because I've been on the road the last for a year, starting in April of 2021. Doing a zigzag cross-country tour of the United States. And I was in New York for a good, week. And I've always wanted to go there, but I didn't have a chance. And I was gone. I was like, oh, man, I never got to do that. Mm-hmm. And I was so excited that this opportunity was able to put me there. And the funny thing is, it's like, so just to kind of go into like the process of how we got there again is, I was rounding out the rest of my tour, heading back to California to start editing together this documentary I'm doing as a side note called USA to Z. When I got that communication of you've been invited, and I ended up figuring, I was in Texas at the time, went up through Mexico. Once I was in Texas talking to Edwin, we figured out the plans, and then I decided to circle back the long way, coming up through New Mexico, and then to Colorado, Wyoming, and start heading over east towards through South Dakota and Idaho, and then Minneapolis, and then coming down Wisconsin to Chicago for us to get this flight there and back. So
we flew out of O'Hare.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to figure out how do we logistically, if I'm in another part of the country, and it's like, we would rather be on a plane together, even though, I mean, to be honest, once I'm on a plane, you see, I just basically fall asleep.
Yeah.
I have a gift. I go into stasis mode So even though we were sitting next to each other, you were thinking, oh, wait, we'll sit next to each other and have a conversation. I'm just like, because I snore, you know. Anyway.
And on the flip side, anytime we're in a moving vehicle that is not a plane, I promptly fall asleep.
Yeah, because you're not the driver, though.
I'm not the driver.
Yeah.
Never the driver.
Yeah, so I'm sorry I interrupted. We were talking about, we were basically talking. I had the opportunity to see this wonderful airport, and it was like the perfect mental transition. Mm-hmm. That transition from business to pleasure happened at JFK.
Oh, absolutely. That was the turnkey moment of like, this is, everything has been work until now, and now it's time to let that go and to just really enjoy it. For me, this is my first time out of the Americas, my first time going to Europe.
That was another cool thing. It's like I had been to Europe decades ago. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, it was familiar. I mean, again, Amsterdam is probably my favorite city that I've ever visited. And it's just bike-friendly, walkable, fun. But when we got to France, which I had been to before, and to be honest, I wasn't as big a fan of France when I was there. You know, especially I went a little off-season to French Riviera, but it was so cool, especially when we were getting there, seeing everything through your eyes, like seeing your experience through it, like traveling there, getting off doing that, getting to the train and stuff like that, and figuring out how to navigate to our Airbnb that first day. It was kind of cool. Like, you're like, look at the little car. And I was like, oh yeah, there's like little cars here.
now it is like, I'm a fan of small compact cars here in the U.S., mm-hmm. but in Europe, the sheer amusement of seeing these, like, not compact cars, but just like wee little cars.
Yes.
I remember having a very solid laugh at, and laugh meant like just the pure enjoyment of just seeing this man in a very, very small car,
like an arm span car.
God. Yes, where it just looked like a little micro machine that you could just like put in any parking spot, or put two in any American parking spot, right. And I just bursted out laughing in joy of just like seeing this as not like some sort of rare occurrence, but I'm now witnessing a form of normality in Europe, and just really, really enjoying the magic for the first time.
Yeah, it was cool to see that, and also just all like, I mean, just little things too, because I mean, that was, you've been to other countries, obviously.
Yeah, but they've all been within the Americas.
When we were going there, it was interesting because there was a part of me that wanted to rent a car and go through there, but soon after we got there, there was couple good reasons that we didn't. First off, like the nice thing about Europe, and especially this area, is that you can easily navigate by train. So we landed in Nice and we took a train, missed our stop by several stops. And
the view was great, though.
Oh yeah.
We had stayed on the view and forgot to get off.
Well, we dozed. I thought I could close my eyes for a second, and to be honest, the trains there move faster and have less stops. So I was like, oh, this is gonna be a while. And we were like in Cannes very quickly, and I just like figured, oh, we can't be there yet. And so I just was like, I have a minute to close my eyes. And next thing you know, we're like 3 stops and we're in the mountains of like
3 stops is like
we were like
30 miles.
Yeah, like seriously. And it was just, and we were like, do we have to buy a return ticket? What is it like navigating to try not to misstep while we're there being like the stupid Americans? But we were getting tired, so we decided we'd just jump on the other train. Well, the other good reason, I mean, we got on the train and we were able to get back. The other, actually a couple more good reasons. You could get to where you need to get generally in Cannes. You could get right there, and that just puts you in the heart of everything. We got an Airbnb up into like the mountain that was maybe about 20-minute drive up into the mountain. And I wouldn't have wanted to drive that because it was like narrow roads, It reminded me of, if you've ever watched, and I'm going to date myself by my reference here, but I used to watch Mr. Bean all the time. And Mr. Bean would zip around in this little car and like literally like run cars off the road and just do this. I mean, there seems to be culturally, everyone is very patient. And even though there's not like, one car will dominate the road and they kind of scooch in front of each other, no horns or anything, but they're zipping through those mountains. And I was just like, all right, that alone. But the other reason I wanted to say is gas prices. I mean, right now, especially driving through the country in a diesel engine, gas prices are gone up here. And you meet a lot of people, it's like, oh, with the sticker that I did that with Biden. It's like, all right, I was in Europe. Gas prices are high there.
But they've been historically high there.
But even talking to them, they were saying it's gotten much higher. As we got to the Uber driver, I mean, you had passed out in a couple Uber rides, but that was like a later night. But I remember talking to them, and they said that their gas prices had gone up there too. So, yeah, so we did Uber and Lyft there, and that was perfect. It was just a 20-minute ride back and forth.
I was very grateful to the great drivers who made everything safe. And we did not have to ever think about renting a car because I would have not felt safe. Not because you can't drive.
No, but
he's driven all across the country. But it's just a different world.
They ended up working out, I mean, perfectly outside of that last day where we basically had to wait until like 5 a.m. to get a car back.
That was a while.
I mean, it was just saturated, and so that took a little while to get back. But outside of that experience, which honestly wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, you could have experienced.
We were also like
pretty in the bag.
Late.
Yeah, we were out. We didn't get home until about 4 or 5 in the morning.
We were at the after party.
Yes.
That then extended to
another bar.
Post after party.
Yep.
That then turned into post sandwiches.
That's right. The sandwich place. Oh. Which kind of plays it nicely. So let me just kind of preface with the cookie cutter. I think right now to date, even since Cannes, we've been invited to other festivals. There's been one in New York, Athens Short Film Festival, Splice most recently in New York, and an honorable mention in another festival I got an email from just the other day. So right now, the cookie cutter to date has been honored in over 20 festivals around the world. We have been recognized formally with awards or honorable recognition in, I want to say, 6 festivals, and we've been the winner of 3. We had a jury prize in one, like as an audience thing, which is also great. But Cannes was the very first in-person festival that I've been able to attend with this film. And it might be the last. I mean, right now we're at the end of, I've been entering this film into Film Freeway, and that's a great way to put your profile and everything. That Cannes was the first in-person festival able to be, in attendance. I'm happy with it being the last.
Yeah, I mean,
it kind of like it opened the bar and closed the bar at the same thing. It's just like, it was just the ultimate, and it's like definitely is like, all right, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it as best we can in a 4-day weekend, which is essentially what we did.
Yeah.
It was quick because you had to get back because you had another thing happening in Orlando.
Yeah, I was speaking at Podfest Orlando, and so I needed to get back to Chicago to switch my bags and fly to Orlando.
And then after that you went to Portland, or you came back and then you went to Portland? Is that what happened?
Then I went to Portland, then I went to LA, and while in LA,
you reconnected with somebody that you met at Cannes.
I sure did.
Which is, again, Mr. Network, because I met some great people along the way. Really, really great spectrum of storytellers and artists. But my funnest, going back to the sandwich place that you mentioned, which was on our last night, we found that earlier on too, and we were able to meet up with a journalist at that sandwich place, and it ended up being the official first screening in France. And what I'll say about the cookie cutter is the story is weird if you haven't seen it. It was the story given to us from the university. So Mo Statmo has operated alongside with universities to create a production pipeline learning experience. The story was given to us from this university, and we embraced it. And the one thing I really like about this story, and what it was my goal in storytelling, and it was also kind of mapped out this way, is that completely visual storytelling. So it is languageless. And the first test of that, we sat down at that sandwich shop. We were just walking around Canton. We were trying to find a bite to eat. You know, finding a place to eat ended up being not a challenge, but there's crowds and there's waits and it's European time. So it's not like they're rushing over to your table and they're giving that and they're picking up the check. It's like when you sit down, be ready to set a spell.
I felt the expectation was if you're sitting down, you're there to enjoy the meal in leisure. And be it that we had urgency at times to get back to the festival, being able to find the right place to give us that urgency became the diamond we had to sometimes search for.
Right. Yeah, and we ended up finding this one place. And another thing about Edwin that I like is that while we were traveling, Edwin is unapologetically American, United States American, in that I was kind of like, bonjour, you know, comment allez-vous? I was trying to like say things to ingratiate myself enough. And Edwin's just like, hi. And it was just like, there was no like apology. It was like, I'm not going to even trying to pretend that I'm speaking another language.
So it was my lack of confidence in even saying the word bonjour.
Yeah.
Because whenever I would say it, it would be bonjour in like the quietest, meekest voice because I was so unsure of how to say it properly, or if I was saying it properly. Right. I hadn't prepped myself mentally to say it.
No, that's totally a thing.
And so I was
totally,
just like,
I agree.
I am going to own the fact that I am not from here,
right? And
just be as like kind through gestures,
right,
and sympathetic through gestures as I can, rather than extending myself and making myself look like what I would feel like a fool.
It's funny because from the outside, I just saw you as somebody like, hello. It's like you were establishing, I'm an English-speaking, non-native that is interacting with good intentions, and you were facilitating like you were at ends to your means. So you, as an example, the bow tie search, or meeting this guy in the sandwich shop. So we ordered sandwiches, and you had sat down first, and he happened to be sitting there. I wasn't even privy to what had happened beforehand, but you started a conversation with this guy who spoke not a lick of English. Neither of us speak any French other than my couple of, Duolingo phrases. And you somehow, we were able to have a conversation with this guy. He's probably like in his late 60s.
Probably. And
he's a journalist, and he had been covering Kyiv and stuff like that. And I guess what I understood, you kind of almost had a conversation with him before I got there, but it was along the lines of every year he comes to Cannes and he does some write-ups of stories or whatnot. And at one point, so I had this box with me. While I was traveling, I printed out a bunch of these little boxes. I don't know if there's a way to show. You could see this. But it has basically our credits, like a truncated credits, and I'll show you some slides. And then on the inside tab of this box, I had created a QR code that a smartphone could scan, and then there's a private link to the film. Like, we still don't have the film public as of right now in June of 2022 because it's still in festivals and you can't have your film out online. It kind of discredits it and deflates the purpose of festivals. But I was going around and it's like, do you want to see the film? And I would open this up, they go to the QR code. This guy didn't have a smartphone though. He was like an old school guy, and he's just like, I don't have. So I was able to just pull it up on my phone, and I took my phone and I set it. I just had a can, And then I took my phone and I set my phone right there. And I sat back and I watched him watch it. And that was the first official screening of the Cookie Cutter in Cannes.
and from what I had gathered, not knowing any official French, but knowing little bits and pieces from other languages, I was able to piece
Romance
together
language type of gleaning.
Piece together. Once again, how accurate we'll see.
Yeah.
What I understood is that he had historically been a war correspondent,
right? Yeah,
and somehow over a few years, they had also given him the task of coming out
to Cannes once a year
to review films. But never the war films. It was always the comedies, and that's
the romantic comedy and stuff like that. That's right. He was explaining that, and I was just like, "So you're going from covering war to?" And he's like, "This is a romantic comedy." You know, it's just like, and I was just like, "Wow, that's really a fascinating." I mean, that's got to be just a mess with your mind. I mean, I guess there's a nice thing to kind of get outside of that mindset.
Yeah, and props to his was supervising editor who maybe saw something within him that he would be great to cover romance film comedies. Maybe it was his way of giving him some sort of like therapy for everything that he has seen or at least written about.
That's possible. I want to see. I have this iPad down here that I'm referencing some of the things to kind of keep on some sort of linear path about this story, and I want to see if I could find the guy's name, the journalist. Yeah. So
we're not going to show this picture because this has like all of his information.
No, we're not going to show. We're not going to show his business card. He was a little possessive of that, but we do have the shot of him watching the film. I don't know if I have it.
He also,
which I'll probably try and put in this podcast. So if you get a chance to watch him, he's so expressive with his face while he was watching it. His eyes were like, It was really interesting.
I also loved that he took out this little, I think it was like a pouch or an envelope, and not only had his business card in there, but then also had his media press, his current one, and then his first one from when he was first starting out, and there was this very like 20-something version of him. Oh,
that's right. He had the young version of his like press credential.
Yes.
That's right. I forgot about that. That was really cool. Yeah. I mean, the card he showed us, he had just kind of clipped it out of a printed piece of paper.
I mean, that's what most media passes are.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So yeah, it was really cool sitting down with him and actually having him react. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things I have to say is, especially during COVID, what's the point of making films if you don't get the audience? So I've directed for stage, I've directed outside of the stage, but even on screen, directing for screen, there's an audience. Mm-hmm. And I had an animated film screen years ago in Chicago, 2007. And to be in an audience to react to the work you've put in is really kind of the payment of the hard work you've, all that blood, sweat, and tears. And it was just kind of wild, seeing people react, because it's such a foreign thing. I mean, originally the Cookie Cutter had an in-person screening with Mo Stopmo's first festival to be based in Oakland, and then COVID hit. And we canceled that, and we've been online since then. Maybe one day we'll be an in-person festival, as was always meant to be. I mean, the idea of also making a production with, making a film, and even talking about this now, about the process of the journey of this film, is as storytellers and filmmakers, is what is it like for your film to be at a festival? And what is it like for it to win a festival? And what does that audience adulation feel like? And it just was like one of those elusive things during COVID. So when this Gerard was able to watch the film and react at the points that warranted reaction, everyone's different, and it's just great to see that expression. That just kind of like, all right, I've connected on an emotional level or a comedic level or a horror level, and it kind of validates being a storyteller, being a director, the acting that all the animators put into the character, the efforts of creating a realistic environment that will suspend disbelief, that sets that are no bigger than an oversized Amazon box will convince somebody that this is a reality. You know, sets and lights that are no bigger than a closet in some cases are an engaging location for a story plot point. So that is the one thing I will have to say is the one thing I wish I could convey to those who haven't had an opportunity for their film or their story to be screened in front of a live audience.
And also the further validator of the art of stop motion, as when you remove language, what you would consider spoken language, and just leave it as visual language, and how like universal that is. Like here's a filmmaker from the US showing a project to someone in France, and he understood the entire thing clear as day.
Visually, yeah.
And like there's not many films that can get away with saying that despite any language barrier, it will be fully understood.
Right. Well, one of the nice things about having this film being a completely visual story is that there's never an added obstacle of subtitles, especially entering festivals. If it's not an English speaking film, English subtitles, or how many sets of subtitles you might need for the film. It's a clean visual presentation that you don't need a lick of dialogue to understand. So that is primarily, as a storyteller, showing versus telling is always the primary goal. And visual storytelling is universal. As I've become more of a student of story and an advocate of personally the psychology of story, how I've kind of come to discover on this, especially within the last couple of years of making this film and seeing how it's doing, but also continuing to tell other stories, is that there's not a thing on this planet that isn't storytelling. A stop sign is storytelling. And you see a red octagon anywhere on the planet in any different language, you know the story. Stop there or there's trouble, you know?
Something I'd really love to point out is in the US, you'll see a circle, red circle, and a slash. And that tells you, don't do that.
Right.
Or this is not allowed. Over there, they don't need the slash. They just give you the red circle on the logo, and you're like, oh yeah, I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you got to club people over the head over in this country for a little bit more of that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, like you'll just see like these little icons of like a cell phone and a red circle, but not the slash. Right. Yeah, so yeah, that's true. But yeah, visual storytelling is universal, and being able to do this as a visual story and having an audience that can absorb it and appreciate it on top of it, which is what you always hope for. Absorbing is one thing; they'd be like, "Oh, okay," but like reacting, laughing, shock, all that kind of stuff. That was a cool moment. So let's kind of rewind a little bit though and talk about, we got there the first day. We finally got settled in our place, and silly me had no idea that Cannes was a black tie affair engagement. And neither did Edwin. No. You know, talking about rookies. So the first thing, being in communication with the people who were doing the showcase of the cookie cutter, I was just kind of shooting a WhatsApp every back and forth, and I was like, is this a black tie event? He's, oh, very much so. When you're going to screenings and all this stuff, you should be wearing a black tie. And that was a funny happenstance. Our Airbnb that we had was up in the mountains. So it was a little pool house. 20 minutes up the mountain. Great little spot. I honestly didn't take many photos of it. You might have taken more photos.
It took a few.
So, we the hosts, amazing. And at one point, I was just like, listen, we didn't know this was a black tie affair. Can you help us out? So the funny thing is, it's like, I was talking to, there was a husband and a wife, and there was a couple kids. The kids kind of did a little more translating, but the wife said, my husband and I are classical musicians, and he might have an extra tuxedo. Mm-hmm. So I had a couple of jackets that I could pull off, but one wasn't going to work, and we were trying to figure this out. And then all of a sudden she's like, yeah, we have an extra tuxedo.
And he was my size.
And he was your size. So that was like such a nice kismet moment, just kind of everything lining up. Like, wow. There was a moment, it's like, well, Edwin, if you have to buy a tuxedo for a Cannes, it's a good reason to buy a tuxedo, but it was going to be a high-ticket item because everywhere in Cannes, high-end fashion, there's like, I don't even know fashion, but I mean, it's just like Versace and Gucci, and it's just like all these like Louis Vuitton.
There was no Men's Warehouse.
Yeah, there was no Men's Warehouse, exactly. There were some lower-end things, but in Cannes, in the French Riviera, basically you were going to drop some coin.
Yeah.
You're going to drop some euro.
and you were going to look superb.
Yes.
And then have to fly back with it, which...
Yeah, packing, wrinkling up your suit.
Yeah. But yeah, that was not necessary. We're super fortunate to have them be able to loan me.
Yeah.
Loan me a suit. And then we had to look for a tie.
Yeah.
Or a bow tie.
And I had said at one point, I was just like, I don't understand at Cannes, because I just needed a bow tie. And I was just like, if I were looking to make a buck at this festival, I would have a big folding table with all different types of ties just laying out, and just like in a little section, not in the main area, but to the side. And people, I'm sure, would just snap it up. And again, you, unapologetically English speaking, we're walking around and it's just like going into like a little, gift shop or, a little tourist store. You're just like, excuse me, do you sell bow ties? And then she's like, right this way, And we go and there's like a little display with only like 3 little bow ties in black. And I just said...
all the same model.
Exactly, yeah. The same make and model. Yeah. Black bow ties in a little box. And then I was like, oh, do you have any other colors? And she's like, oh, no. They do not allow us to sell any other bow ties during the festival because it's very strict dress code. It's a black tie. And I was like, oh, well, there goes my marketing idea. But I fortunately had this kind of like suit jacket that was going to work for me, and I was able to throw something enough together to kind of have a nice little...
It was like a deviation from the black tie, but
right.
Not so much so that you're outside of the norm. You're just being...
fashionable,
artistic.
Exactly, yeah. It was artsy enough that it was just like it could turn a little bit of a head, maybe. Mm-hmm. Partially out of, oh, that's interesting. Partially out of, what does this person think they're doing? But it worked, and so I do have a Cannes bow tie. So that's kind of a nice little souvenir from there. But we got the bow tie the first day we got there. That we actually got down into town and actually tried to get into the swing of things. We had just missed picking up our credentials, which were expensive.
Yeah.
And, we had to kind of get a ticket to all this thing. It wasn't like, welcome to this festival, here's all this free stuff. It was like, here's your credentials. So we went and, we just missed it. The headquarters closed at, I think it might have been 5 or 6, and we had gotten there at 6:30.
Yeah. We missed it by an hour plus.
Yeah. So we just chalked it up to, well, let's look around town. Because I think once we were done traveling, we just passed out for a while in the Airbnb.
Yeah.
And then we decided, let's get down there and make some, see if we could get some shit done. And that didn't happen.
We did a lot of walking and understanding the layout without a map.
Yeah.
Which next time we should look at a map before we do all the walking. But
right.
It was great. It was great to to soak in the possibilities that would be unlocked once we had our badge,
Right.
which we got the next day promptly
Right. That's true.
in the morning. But yeah, it was
That night, the mission was kind of get the credentials and get some food and figure out what we can do from there.
yeah,
We couldn't get the credentials, which meant we couldn't really figure out what to do from there.
right.
So we focused mostly on the food.
Yes, which I couldn't tell you what we ate that first night.
That was when we were walking around for a while. I think we were just kind of getting oriented with the town. And of course, they have a McDonald's. They have, a Steak and Shake of all places. Then there was a lot of other places. But that's the night that we ended up getting late night sushi.
That was quite good.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And things, during the festival, I don't know if it's during the festival or always, but I mean, the place was open till like 3 a.m. Like things were just open late. So we ended up just having a fun little evening, getting some late night sushi. And it was like a good, like, while I was there, I wanted to experience the food there as much as possible. And you're off of the Mediterranean Sea, so they had some fresh fish. Mm-hmm. So that's nice, if you're going to eat local. If you're going to fly somewhere to eat local, that's the way to start it off. And it was a pretty good...
Nothing says France than I had sushi.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't even remember the place, but it was... I mean, every place was kind of bumping and hopping, and people were, having a good time.
We were also there. That's probably... That festival is probably like the peak of tourism and
Yes.
and industry for them. So
Yep.
all the businesses were there to
That's their money making.
to do,
Uh-huh.
which was great. My biggest want was to get a French baguette.
Oh, yeah.
So being 20 minutes away and staying out to the last showing of films and then further walking piers and whatnot to the late night is all the bakeries are closed. So we're there when the bakeries are open, but I don't want to walk around with a meter-long piece of bread.
Just gnawing on a heel of a piece of bread.
But
yeah.
I wanted it, which I had envy for everyone who had
You
a
had baguette envy.
and then also every baguette that I also saw had like the top piece like broken off and hopefully consumed.
Yeah.
And I just nothing but envy.
And I had learned that you're kind of a bread snob.
I enjoy high quality bread.
Yeah, and I didn't really understand. I mean, I like bread, and I definitely can understand bad bread, but you kind of were talking about bread on another level. So that's something that we ended up fulfilling more in Amsterdam.
Yes.
Which was really great. But again, we'll get to that in a minute. So end of day one, we didn't get our credentials, but we got some sushi. We walked around. We saw yachts along the water, and they're all fundraising yachts associated with different films. And we were kind of listening to things and just kind of scoping things out. Without our credential, we couldn't even like walk into the areas in which we had already paid. So we're just like, all right.
Mind you, it's what, like a 15-day festival?
Yes.
We're only there for 4 days.
Not even
5 days.
Wasn't even.
Well, I mean,
our trip was 5 days. We left on a Thursday, and we were back on a Monday.
We were in Amsterdam on a Monday.
But like it was like you gain a day coming back to this country. So basically, we were back by Tuesday morning.
Sure.
So I mean, basically Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Right? Okay. Is that right?
I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, maybe that's how I saw it. It's like
we were there for a short amount of time.
Yes. An extended weekend.
And we were not able to do everything we wanted on that first day because we missed our badges. Anyways.
Yeah.
We made up for it the second day, and the third day is when you had just the screening.
Right.
That went really well.
That was
fun.
Very
late.
Yes. That was the big night. Yeah, that was fun. And then the fourth day, because we ended it so early in the morning from the third day, we didn't get back to the pool house probably until 3 in the morning, 4. I mean, there was daylight, so it was like 4:30 in the morning, and then I slept in, and you decided to let me sleep in, but you were all about networking and getting back out there, and you kind of did some. I was just kind of like I was just dragging behind you on that day, but kind of. So yeah, so I essentially think it was like first day no credentials, second day a bunch of screenings.
Mm-hmm.
Third day, which would have been Sunday, so it's like we flew out Thursday. Friday was the first day, no credentials. Saturday was the bunch of screenings. Sunday was the cookie cutter and presentation and the showing. And then Monday was leaving Cannes.
We left like late evening. We were there.
We didn't leave late evening. We had to get on the train by 4.
We left Cannes to get on a train to Nice to jump on a plane.
To Amsterdam. Right. So...
short amount of time. Yeah. Way too short. Yes. Don't go there.
Unless
you're such a short amount of time.
Yes.
It makes... you will leave sad. I left a little sad.
Well, there's... And everyone we talked to, like even at that Sunday party, was like, when do you leave? And we're like, tomorrow. And they're like, tomorrow? And they were like, oh, you're leaving tomorrow. Well, how have you been here? And it's like, we got here Thursday. And they're like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Mm-hmm. So it's pretty much unheard of. And especially, again, the money you end up spending to get there, to stay there, to go to play on part of the festival.
I mean, forget the money, just the time, it's an event that only lasts X amount of time.
Right.
And if you're there for such a condensed amount of time, mm-hmm. It's like, if it takes you a day to get there and a day to get back, and you're only there for 4 days, mm-hmm. It feels like it's just too little.
Right.
I would, when I go again, it would be 7 days.
Well, I guess that's the takeaway with this. It's like, we talked about
7 days of being there.
Yes.
Exclude travel.
Right. I mean, even if you could do the whole festival, no. I could see burned out. After a week, like even after so on the second day we were there, and we had our credentials, we hit the ground running. I was very active on trying to get into films. And my internet connection was a little bit better on my phone for whatever reason than your phone was. So I was kind of saying, we're going to get to this film and then like see what would work. So we lined up 3 or 4 films that day. And I will tell you, by the fourth day, by the fourth film on the first day, I was done watching films. Mm-hmm. And there needs to be a balance. And there were other things that could be done there. There's a networking area where you could go to different tents, and each tent is the film consulate of a country. There was a press area where they did like specific parties and drinks and events that we didn't really get to take advantage of in any real way. We were able to meet some good people from different parts of the world, and we were able to make some connections. But it's the kind of thing that, I guess it's like, I mean, if you're really going to see all those films over the course of 2 weeks, I would just be like, get me the hell out of here.
Well, I think, there's different rationales for why you go to Cannes, right? Like you can go there as a lover of film and right. just consume film, fresh film all day long for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Or if you're there as a filmmaker of some sort, you can go and have meetings that could lead to your right. securing the future of a film, whether right. it's in the beginning or at the tail end.
Right.
And that's a different experience altogether and a
right.
different journey.
Right.
I think we had 1 day of fully embracing the we are those who love film and are there to enjoy film.
Right.
And then day 2 was we are there as filmmakers, understanding the networking in the camaraderie with all of these different filmmakers. Mm-hmm. And the last day was let's pick up the information that can open up connections to future projects for us, which is where going and meeting people at these different film consulates was valuable.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
basically,
it was a great first. It was a great first time there.
Yeah.
That I would have done it differently, but be it that's not an option, I now know for next time I go how to better enjoy it.
If we were going to break it down into days, and I break this experience down into 3 days, like outside of travel is a lost day. That's just whatever. So not even the day after the presentation, I'm going to break it down into 3 days. First day was like orientation of the landscape, the procedure, everything, getting settled. Second day, we took full advantage of being film lovers, seeing 4 films that day. I think we saw, varying in content for the most part, very dramatic things. We ended up seeing, I forget, you might remember the names of the films, but one was based in the Middle East about somebody trying to get out of the Middle East, and it was just a very depressing story, and kind of the message of the story is the voices in the Middle East, there's nothing they can say or do to change their fate of death of where they're from, even if they aspire to get out of there, which was really depressing. The second film we ended up seeing was similar in content, but it was about the revolution in was it Chile?
It was Chile,
which was started very similarly in terms of oppression, but very hopeful at the end, which was nice. Then a big transition to see this film called Le Petit, was it Nicolas, which is kind of like the French Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
And watching that, it was a little bit docudrama of the evolution of the creation of this character that might be kind of a national institution in France. I'm not sure. I just never heard of it. But it was all done in a docudrama, but all animation. So that was kind of fun to see animation, which is a very rare thing to see at Cannes. Again, usually the animation sect of any film festival in France is going to be Annecy, which is like usually a couple weeks later. So, and then we saw this other film, more advertised and more with like, I don't know if more known actors.
Yeah.
Which
was fine. Which was just a different sort of film that just, I thought it was okay.
It was a little too, out of all the films, the last film going backwards was a little too familiar notes of very elaborate staging and cinematography, but there wasn't much behind it. It seemed a little transparent in trying to make beautiful shots that weren't necessarily serving the story, and after a while you just got tired of that. I don't know. That's how I felt. I don't know if you felt the same. I honestly, I think I dozed a little bit during that one. It was a long day.
I mean, it was an extremely long day, and at that point we'd already spent easily 7-8 hours.
In a movie theater.
In movie theaters. So
and not much food in between.
It was somewhere between the film was a little slow and we were just a little tired. I didn't care for it, but that's okay because that's where there's film for everyone.
Yeah, but like as a condensed experience for our second day, film was packed from early afternoon to late evening. And then
we did more walking.
Walked through towns, walked through hills, checked out different places, finally found a place to eat. I don't know what we ate that day. That might have been the sandwich place that we discovered and we had gone back at one point later on. I'm not sure if that was it or not. So then day 3. Day 3 was getting ready for the cookie cutter, and presenting it and going to this great event that was, again, Toffee, and also it was like Toffee Animes, and also in conjunction with the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival, which I never entered, but I didn't realize it was like that was so during COVID, those relationships with these festivals had been on pause. I'm not sure what had happened in Cannes those 2 years during COVID, but this was the first year since COVID that they were going to reconnect as an associated festival conglomerate with Cannes. So,
and don't forget, there was Stage 32, which is this wonderful resource for learning from professionals via webinars. They were also another.
They were a big presence there.
They were a big presence in that.
Right. So what ended up happening on that day 3 is basically what I had kind of geared up for when I was planning the trip. So these boxes right here is kind of a result of that. Trying to figure out how do we stand out, especially in an after party of this crowd, and how do you explain animation? Fortunately, during this party, they were looping the cookie cutter in the background. Like everything was being looped in the background of this party. And I was walking around, I had a cocktail in my hand, and I had the cookie box like this. And I'm walking around, and I'm like, hi, how are you? What's that? The cookie cutter. I was like, oh yeah, what's that? And at times, I was able to have a conversation with somebody and just be like, oh, just look over your shoulder. And it would be looping in the background. So if they hadn't seen it already, then they were associating. They're like, oh my gosh, stop motion animation. And then it's like, in that environment, they would see it, but it was a big party environment. So that's where I kind of made, again, with the box, I decided to intentionally print this, and I don't know if I could, basically there's the nice art that is kind of a good pop reference to the Scream, and this is kind of the credits of the cookie cutter for the most part, except for the poster. But then I would just say, well, if you want to see a private link, I would open up the QR code, and then they would, let's see if we could show it there. I don't know how well it's going to show, but showing the QR code, and then they would just see it, and they would load up, and then we would have a conversation. I was like, oh, you could see it later. But the other thing I did on the inside was I had created these little bags, and there'll be a slide that basically what I did is had these little cellophane bags, and I filled with these little, literally, cookie crisp cookies. Whoop, there you go. I'll just kind of let it all fall everywhere. This is your house. I'll sweep it up later. But they were like 3 little cookies in each bag. And if you've seen the film, I also had 2 little red jelly beans in there. And I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it yet.
So watch it.
Yeah, so you'll watch it. And to be honest, if you want to QR code off of this, and like if I put the graphic on it and you want to be sent to a private link at this point, that's fine. But it's the people are like, what does this mean? The cookies I get, but what are the jelly beans? I was like, you got to watch the film. I was like, you need to watch the whole thing. And that was a fun little thing. And what we did is had a display. There was a swag area too. There was they gave away candles and perfume and tote bags and stuff like that. And I was able to set up a little cookie box display, almost like a grocery store. So I had set that up ahead of time. I scattered the little cookies everywhere on the table and had a big display. Like 3 or 4 tiers high. And as I saw it deplete, I'd go and I'd build it up again through the night, but every so often grabbing a box. And if I met somebody, giving them the box. And also inside was a pin of Mo Stop Mo and a QR code to the business card and all that kind of stuff. I think here. This was kind of, I don't necessarily have it, but I was going around with the business card, and then I was flipping around, and there's a Mo Stop Mo QR code for the website, and then there's a QR code for Rocco Studios, and I had this pin buttoned through the eyeball of my face logo. So essentially, I was able to effectively kind of impart an experience that you helped me curate. And I also want to thank Wendy Owens for helping me get this all ready and prepped, and she's very good at paper packaging, and she's been experienced in so many different things in production that we were able to make this nice little tight fun presentation to people, and they really enjoyed that. And that this also mirrors to an experience in the film is like there was a lot of hitting on, very much hitting on branding for the product and for the studios. So,
and this is also like a really like think of the of what most films have at festivals, the swag,
yeah,
the little mementos for you to like hold on to, and you know, seeing something like this that is so creative, but then also there's so many connections to the film itself that it just sparks your curiosity.
right.
I've been to other festivals where, you know, if the film had a specific word in it, all of a sudden there'd be some sort of like tchotchke, like stress
Squeeze
ball,
toy, yeah, some mass-produced
yeah,
thing.
with like a name on it. It's just like that's novel, but not real. I'm not.
It's mass-produced.
I'm not driven to see your film because I'm squeezing this
Right.
spongy thing.
Yeah.
I'm squeezing the spongy thing because.
Yeah, I mean, and not to pat myself too much on the back, excuse me, but I felt pretty proud of the little low-budget package. I mean, these buttons were originally for our in-person festival, but when people see the hashtag, it's like right away they're paying attention to a hashtag, which I think, like, branding-wise, I'm kind of happy about Mo Stop Mo that way. Because even if you don't have the website or something, like if you remember the hashtag is, and they're like, what's Mo Stop Mo? It's like, it's short for more stop motion. And if they're like, oh, okay, now I remember that, and they do that search, you could get to the website or anything like that. But I was pretty happy for a paper printed thing with a little bit of cookie crisp and jelly bean thing and a button and a card. I felt like it was a fun little experience that they could watch the film, sit back with a cookie and a jelly bean if they wanted to sit through 8 minutes of something and just enjoy it. So I know we had discussed different things because, like, I mean, this is very much grassroots, bare bones, low budget, but just enough to kind of plant the seed to, like, remember something. I thought it worked pretty well, and by the end of the night, all the boxes were gone. Whether that came,
They were all taken by people who were just fascinated to see what was in it.
Right. They were just like, I mean, it's just like, you know,
you shake it and it's like it has a presence.
What's inside? Yeah. It's kind of like the Cracker Jack of can, and it was like, you know, you put it on a display and you dress it up a little bit, and it's just like cans in a tower versus cans on a shelf. You're gonna move those cans faster. So they moved. They disappeared, and we're getting the name out there. And that's what that whole thing was, networking. We met some interesting people that night. You had met some really cool people, like between, people running the Berlin Film Festival. I met a filmmaker who was all over the place. You had met a publicist, a press agent, got some business cards.
There was one fellow that I'd met at a festival here in Chicago.
That's right, an actor.
Twice over here in Chicago that just walking through.
You recognize him having dinner with lunch with his wife.
Yeah. And it was one of those like, hey. Like,
and that was unfortunate that we didn't have the time to go and see and hang out with them at their party. We probably should have done that instead of a movie.
No, we didn't. We had that was the night that you had screened.
Was it that same night?
That same night.
So we didn't have the time to do it because we ended up going to that little village for a minute before we headed over to our...
I think we had decided we needed to get a lay of the land before and be early to the event.
Yeah, because we were still trying to figure out where is this. So like the way that it's set up in Cannes is that there's theater screenings, there's beach screening. Excuse me. I've got allergies. It's not COVID. I've tested myself, believe me. Well, we'll find out after today if you get it. But there's beach screenings. There's tents everywhere. There's a big presence of Top Gun, like at Cannes, which was, okay, fine. I mean, nothing against Top Gun, but I was just kind of like surprised that there was such a big presence at Cannes.
I mean, I think they unveiled it.
Yeah, that was
there.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean.
But everywhere you turn, there are just everywhere you can go, you can see something. So we had to find out where our thing was, and it wasn't like in some major theater. It was like it was actually like a beach screening. So they set up the screen and then the tent, and
I mean, it was a private, invite only
right
event.
Yeah, you had to have like been a part of it ahead of time.
Yeah. So it was not an open to the public. It was a
right. You had to like know somebody who was
curated.
going. Yeah, it was pretty secure, and it was a very intentional event that there were some great people a part of it. You know, so I mean, yeah, I assume great people. I don't know. People I would talk to, I was like, oh, that's very interesting. You know, talking. We had talked to the one guy in the beginning of the night who at first he was like very kind of tight-lipped, but then he opened up more and more. I think when we were talking about animation. Do you remember that first guy we had spoken with?
He was
Italian.
the Italian.
Yeah.
Was he part of media?
Something. Honestly, I remember just having a conversation, and after a certain point, he started showing a lot more interest in the project and that dynamic. But it ended up being like there were so many, everywhere you turned, if you made eye contact with somebody and there was a smile on your face, and you know, you just like, hey, what are you here for? What are you here for? And then it was nice to say, oh, my film is being, you know, presented here as well, or I am a part of this festival, or. I mean, it's nice to be in an environment where creative minds can talk about their different backgrounds and finding a common ground, or even maybe not, and just having that interaction. It's like, oh, what's that like? It was just like really cool. But then it like that party ramped up pretty quickly.
Yes, and it was, you know, it was I couldn't even tell you how many hours it was, but the time went by what felt quickly.
Yes.
And it was so enjoyable. It was so many people there said it was their first time dancing in a group.
Yeah.
You know, post-COVID.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And it was so.
Another reason that was nice that it was outdoor on the beach. I mean, I've been very COVID cautious, although in Europe, I mean, basically, who's wearing a mask?
There were so few.
Yeah.
So few people.
Yeah.
But it also energetically it feels very different.
Oh, of course. We did go prepped with masks. We had our Most masks that we flew there with, and then after we got off the plane, nobody is wearing a mask. And we all, granted, we're in a smaller town in areas, but we're also in areas that are, you know, people traveling from around the world.
Right.
But it was just like, you know, when in France. So we're like, okay, we just went with it. And knock on what looks like wood.
We have been very fortunate to not have any ailments, and now that we are, like 2 weeks post that.
I will say, I mean, I'm still COVID free. I mean, I have a little cough right now. The funny thing is, as I've been traveling across this country, I've developed allergies. While we were in Europe, not one throat issue, not one anything. But as soon as I got back here, sniffing.
It's the Midwest. The Midwest is gonna kill me with allergies.
I mean, I got to get out of here, which I'm going to be doing next week, finishing my road trip back to California. But yeah, it was weird. It was like that whole trip was just kind of its own little magical stop. Almost like you had a dream of something. It happened so quickly, and it was so intensely fun. And I mean, even though it was very blurry, I very specifically remember almost every moment of it, which is, for me, a good thing. It's like, I don't have the best of memories, but there's like so many memories of this experience with you. And it was like, I don't want to say once in a lifetime, but if it was once in a lifetime, I mean, I will say that I would be happy to say that that was my experience at Cannes.
It's extremely memorable. I mean, removing all these other, like, first time leaving the Americas.
Yeah.
I mean, it was my first time at this festival. This, like, very prestigious festival, and learning so much and really absorbing so much. I feel that I'm a much more prepared producer, having now now understanding festivals
Yeah.
that have not just the festival viewing experience, but have this ecosystem for doing business. Because in Chicago, I've yet to experience a festival that is really doing both things at the same time as well as Cannes was. I hadn't seen that.
Right.
And maybe that's just
I mean,
my...
it's such a built-in monster there that I don't know if you would ever see it as. I mean, like I don't know the population of Cannes.
French.
Yeah, I mean, of course, yes. I'm not the demographic. I'm talking about the amount of people. But it's like in the Chicagoland area, I think it's something like 8 million, 9 million. Chicago and Chicagoland area. I mean, Cannes is like, small, but I don't know. It was that the scale of a festival in a small area where basically it takes over everything. I've not experienced that. I mean, I would imagine maybe that's what it would be like if you went to the Olympics in a big city, where you imagine everything is going to be taken over by everyone coming in for one event.
Right.
Chicago, being in the Bay Area, it's like there's people coming from all different parts of the world to do different things, but everyone going there was more or less focused on the festival. And not necessarily, like whether it was the drivers, our driver who drove all the way from Paris. I think that's like 4 hours away or something. I don't even know if it's 4 hours, 8 hours, something like that crazy.
It's far.
Yeah, it's far. He drove all the way from Paris just to be in Cannes for that festival, to drive people around. And then he even, he had a fare that came from France, and he was lining up a fare to bring back from Paris, and a fare back to Paris. So that is the thing to do. So if there is an opportunity to go back, planning for that kind of thing, making the time, and having a little bit more of an itinerary, I guess.
You don't know what you don't know.
So
it's really, now that we've gone through it once and had time to reflect on it, the next time I go, I'll approach it completely differently. And I'm sure that even with the best of intentions, at the end of that trip, I'll
have learned
still be
what you've done right and wrong.
I'll still say, the third time I go, I'll approach it differently.
Right. Yeah. So we did the 3 days. That last day, the screening, rolling out afterwards, hanging out until 4 a.m, bouncing around from bars to getting late night sandwiches back at that place again, that sandwich place, which ended up being like a savior.
Yes. Super late night sandwiches.
I mean, it's a sandwich place that's open 24 hours in this small little town, and it was like, thank God.
Yes.
Because, they had food, they had drinks at that place. I was drinking champagne or rosé all night. I don't even think I ate one damn thing at that screening.
I don't think I did.
And there was food, and I was just like, what? It was just like drinking wine and getting baguette-based food. So then the next day, after we shook off that night, it was funny because we stayed at a pool house, and I literally dipped my toe in the pool, and that's all I did while I was there, because there was just no opportunity. You actually were better about getting up and getting work done and stuff like that, where I was just kind of like, I'm just going to sleep. I've seen a pool before.
No, I needed to be in the pool, enjoying the pool.
Yeah.
If it's there, I need to enjoy it at least once, which I did.
Yeah.
I did get quite a bit of work done as well, especially that last day. But I mean, it was such a great experience. We wrapped it up. We went back to the airport, and then this adventure then continued after a short flight in Amsterdam.
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, Edwin found a flight that was a 12-hour layover at Amsterdam, but that wasn't going to start until 11 p.m. And as much as you might think Amsterdam is a 24-hour city, it definitely is not. So we went straight from the airport to 5 a.m. studio, where we met up with Jeroen, and he gave generously 2 hours of his time on the late night, early morning before the first day of production of a new film. And he showed us around generously. He, in our 2021 film festival, he had submitted a stop motion short that was also advertisement for cricket that was Anyone Could Be a Friend, I think that was the name of it. And he's great. I met him in the Bay Area years ago through going to CTN. I met him in Burbank initially, and then I met him in the Bay Area when he was there, and I've been able to keep this relationship with him. So, like I said in the beginning of this interview, is that I got about 2 hours of candid interview of touring a functioning, successful stop motion studio in Amsterdam. And that was the beginning of our 12-hour adventure in Amsterdam. So it started very much with like having to be on and be ready, but also having a beer, seeing a studio, talking shop. You and Jeroen, I should say. I'm terrible with the dialect and accent. But you as a lens freak, camera and that kind of thing. Like, I was talking for a while with recording this, and then you kind of chimed in a little bit, and I was just like, I wish you would have chimed in more, because when you guys started talking about lens and film speed and all that kind of stuff, and all that wonderful stuff that I love as well, but you're definitely more knowledgeable, and both of you guys are more knowledgeable than I am. It's a great learning experience if you get a chance to watch this tour of 5 a.m. Studio in Amsterdam, which will be on again another podcast soon. It was just like a great, enjoyable, fact-finding mission for those who are definitely aspiring to bring stop motion to another level for their project, and especially cinematography. When you guys started talking about that was a real cool aspect. So then we did that. I don't know if you had anything to say about that dynamic, but it was just like...
I mean, it was extremely refreshing to go from a festival that celebrates filmmaking to now we're a short flight into a new country.
Right.
And exploring this wonderful studio that is just has this project that they were like just on like the finishing touches to be able to shoot the next day, and it was just you can feel the energy in the space just ready to like get captured.
Right.
And having him really go into the details of like
everything,
like what drives him, the struggles of COVID, so on and so forth, and to know that whatever time he gave us was such a huge gift.
I was like, at one point, like, because we had gotten in late, and he's like, when are you going to be here? How long is it going to be till you get here? And I just like, of course, I gave him the out. I was just like, we could cancel. But very generous. He's like, no, you should come on by. And he had to get up at 9 a.m, and we didn't leave there until maybe almost 2 a.m, maybe 1:30.
Yeah, it was pretty late.
Yeah, because like we got there, I think we got off the plane, we got there right before midnight. And I think we were leaving about 1:30 or something.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit after.
But it was a extremely candid,
matter of fact
telling of like his evolution of like where he started and where the studio was and its new location and what their plans were going forward. It was so much fun to see his enthusiasm for the art of not only what he's creating now, but what he's created in the past, and like those projects that are extremely memorable to him.
Well, and also what I would say is like, yeah, he has obviously a great resume of projects, but his depth of knowledge of so many things, from again lenses and lighting to casting to machining. Such a well-rounded stop motion artist. It was a great opportunity to really speak to somebody candidly over a beer, touring a studio, right before a big shoot. It was a perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Perfect.
So that ended up being a great little hour and a half, hour 45 minutes. And
then we went on this adventure to enjoy.
Then this was the transition out of fest and film and animation land. This was like almost like the JFK transitioning to this journey. The next part of after that interview was the transition back to the States as I saw it.
Yes, and it was
the final experience. How do we close the bar?
How do we close it? Which was, so what's still open?
Yeah, nothing. Not even the red light district.
But then the journey to, we are in this beautiful biking city. What bicycles are available?
Yeah, we were able to find like a bike share. Downloading an app and trying to figure out a little bit of a language barrier. Not much, but finally getting that together.
And getting it and going and riding for what, 2 hours? No, for 3 to 4 hours.
It was more than 2 hours.
We rode for like 3 or 4 hours.
And we were riding around, and I had been to Amsterdam before, like I said, and back, I had been there decades before, and there used to be just white bikes that were painted, and you could pick them up anywhere along the city and pick them up and just ride them around. And they've since kind of done what most cities have done, is they've monetized a bike share app. And after some trial and error, we figured out where to get them,
right,
how to get them working. And then we hit the ground and we started just riding all around a mostly closed Amsterdam. It's not like Chicago, where it's 24 hours, you could find something open until 5 in the morning. Even we ended up going through the red light district to ride through and just kind of gander at things. And there was like one woman in a window that I saw. I don't know if you saw her.
I don't think so.
But otherwise, the streets were dead, which was nice. Right, and like intentionally for bicycles. Like, I love Amsterdam, and you're a bike enthusiast, and being able to ride through a city in a dedicated bike lane and never having to worry about a car coming up over your shoulder and sharing a lane or anything like that. Amazing.
That, along with there being a little bit of rain.
Oh, we were riding in the rain for a while.
Which then cleared traffic. Riding so late at night. Riding into the morning glow. And then going on this, and then continuing the ride with the goal of we need to smell. Once we smell the right bakery, we will stop and enjoy said right bakery.
Well, I don't know if we had that intention. We discovered that.
I had that.
Well, we discovered it nicely because as we were riding, and I could tell, like, I mean, I'm going to project something that I thought I noticed is like, when we were riding in those bike lanes and everything, I felt like you were like, holy shit, this is amazing being in a city like this. Because I don't know if you've ever been to a city like that, where it was that intentional for bike traffic. I mean, it is its own honored form of transportation. Yeah.
No, I had, in my younger years, in the cycling world, and then during my undergrad, done a ton of research on Amsterdam and other surrounding cities' infrastructure, on how bicycle is the primary means of transportation, and how cities have really pivoted. And once again, exploring that with Chicago and the Midwest, and just always having this fascination of like, wow, like, despite our best efforts of making bicycles extremely inclusive, we are in the Stone Ages compared to their true appreciation of the bicycle as a main form of transportation.
Well, culturally, infrastructure-wise especially, we are in the United States built around the vehicle. And Denmark and like Amsterdam, all those areas are built around the bicycle primarily, especially culturally and historically, and vehicles become secondary, especially, I mean, when, like, again, going back to France, the narrow roads, they're not expanding those roads, they're just getting cars that are smaller that can weave around each other, whereas in Amsterdam, they have the streets, even the bigger streets, they definitely have room for that dedicated bike lane. And it is a dedicated two-way bike lane at that. So it's cool that that is like their first focus. Yeah.
But then my main focus after acknowledging that was we need to get
our food on.
High quality food. We need a proper bakery and we need proper breakfast because we have to return.
Got an 8-hour flight back.
And so that nourishment.
Yes.
Because despite
airline
anything
food
available
via
the airline,
yeah,
everything is going to be such a step down from even the simplest meal in Amsterdam. And we succeeded in both.
Well, yeah, fortunately, we were riding and we, all of a sudden, I mean, Edwin with his nose for bread, we were riding and he's like, what's that smell? And this is about, 2 in the morning, maybe 2:30, dark. And we're smelling out and we see that there's a bakery and it's like this old school, old building bakery that, again, I'll show you an image of it. And we're like, oh, wow, that smells great. And we figured by the time, like, we didn't know what we were going to do and where we can return the bikes and how that was all going to work. But we ended up having to go, like, all the way into the city center where the trains were. And we ended up riding all the way back outside of the city. But on the way back, that bakery was open. Finally. At, like, maybe, at this point, maybe 6 or 7 in the morning.
Yeah, it was like 5 or 6 a.m.
Yeah. And after a little adventure of getting actual cash, because it was a cash-only bakery, that's one something that Jeroen said that he's just like, Amsterdam has changed, it has gentrified, it has gotten expensive. Just like every other place in the world right now, it seems like everything is so expensive and not going anywhere else. And he's like, but, he's definitely of the grassroots, more of the outlier, I don't know if I want to say punk, but just kind of, likes a corner bar, all that kind of stuff, and likes to pay in cash. And this place was like authentic Amsterdam bakery.
It was also the only place
open
that, outside of that, was the only place in our entire adventure that required us to have physical cash. Everything
that's right,
until that point.
It's funny because
was all card.
That's right, and you, never having been to Europe, had not at all handled European money.
Right.
Which, I mean, again, decades ago, this was even before the euro, I just had to, like, different denominations for different countries and doing the exchange and everything. We've been able to pay Lyfts, Ubers, train tickets, everything. Everything was on the card.
Right.
And this was the experience that was like, all right, where do you get the cash? Do you remember that?
Yeah. And we got the cash with all sorts of wacky characters being involved. But
that was an adventure to the ATM on its own, and having to, it's just kind of like any other side hustle. There was a dude who brought us to an ATM. He's like, I showed you this, I could use a couple bucks. Yeah. And the denominations are high, and he ended up, it was a good hustle.
Yeah. I mean, he
and we knew what was happening. It was just like he held up heads in the bargain.
He played his role well.
Yes.
And he did facilitate.
Yes.
And so.
And he also saw a couple of Americans, and he's just like,
it doesn't matter.
Fish out of water.
We
but we didn't have any qualms about it. It was like one of those things. It's like, hey, this is all about the experience. Yeah. So we met a guy, and he helped us get cash.
And which then
for an extended fee,
which then led to us getting the baked goods, which were delicious, so good.
I'm just looking at your face. You're just like, oh god. Let's gloss over that guy.
He did his job.
Well, I mean, I think there's a certain amount of pride being from Chicago and knowing that I've been hustled a bunch of times. I don't think it was a hustle. We knew what was going on, but we just played along, and we're like, all right, there you go.
Let's see how the script turns out.
Right. And it was no different script than you would have found in Chicago.
No.
Yeah.
There was nothing
unique.
Yeah.
But tried and true.
It
worked.
It was a solid copy.
Yeah.
That was not flavorful. It was just solid.
Yes. Yeah.
Tried and true.
It really made you believe in like a world business plan. Whatever worked there could have worked anywhere else in the world. But we got our cash.
We got our baked goods.
And we went back for more baked goods.
Back for more baked goods. And then once that was all had, we found breakfast like an hour plus later. And breakfast was incredible. At least
it's funny because I ended up writing a Google review on it, and I gotta say it was one of, if not the best freshly made breakfast I probably have ever eaten.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like slow cooked eggs, smoked fish, lox, avocado toast. Which, when did this become a thing? The juices were amazing. Mm-hmm. It was like everything. And on top of that, I mean, I'm sorry, the wait staff was,
they were superb. They
were gorgeous.
That too.
I was like, wow. And beautiful wait staff. I was like, there's everything about the aesthetic of the place, very intentional, but also very like small business. Like
the curation of every single detail.
Yes.
Including the waitstaff.
Yes.
Was like it
perfect. It was like perfectly European. I mean, it was just like intentional, fresh, delicious, beautifully aesthetic inside and out. Mm-hmm. And we were in Amsterdam. We didn't get high at all. I mean, not to, it's just like typically when in Rome.
Not to perpetuate a stereotype.
Yeah, but the funny thing is like, especially like, oh, you're in Amsterdam. Even like flying back through customs, they're like, oh, you're flying in through Amsterdam. There's that little look. But it was just like, first off, nothing was open.
Right.
And by the time something was open, we had to get to the airport. It was like a wonderful high of traveling and biking, riding through Amsterdam in rain, going and looking at these different places and just enjoying the ride, and then finishing it off with a wonderful bakery and then a breakfast on top of it. Mm-hmm. And then getting out on a plane and just passing out, after riding all night.
That's right.
Yeah. It was like, again, that transition. And then it was over.
And then we're here. And then reality was like facing us, and we needed to snap out of this European enjoyment and dream aesthetic to, okay, well, I at least was back, and I needed to get certain things accomplished before I went on my next leg of the adventure, which is to Orlando, to Podfest. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
And for me to come back to the States and get on the plan to finalize my road trip. It was just kind of like this moment in time that was really great. If there was like I wanted to coordinate this trip with people who had been on the journey of the cookie cutter along the way. And from the crew that wasn't going to be available, or I wasn't able to kind of logistically make it work. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that I was able to share the trip with you, because I mean you're an integral part of Mo Stop Mo, especially in our last festival, and you are a great producer and storyteller, and it was great to see things through your eyes. It was just like a fun experience overall. And I got to say, you don't know somebody until you travel with them. And I'll say, I don't think I had any issues traveling with you, other than sometimes you fall asleep a little bit. Like you sometimes have a little struggle to like stay awake at the late hours, but that's how we complemented each other. Because I'm not an early person, and you're good at late, but there's a certain point where you're hitting that wall. And especially that last night when we were passing out, I was able to like muscle through and get the car, where you were just basically finding any surface to kind of nap on. And I felt like traveling with you was great because it was just easy, it was fun, and it was like, again, if it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, I'm glad that you were able to join me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Especially if anyone is still watching this podcast or listening to it, the goal, I think, is, as a filmmaker, is experiences that is going to, bring you to a place that you haven't been before. And I'm so fortunate that this film, that has been a product of so many people's efforts, has been able to facilitate some great experiences. I wish I could have shared in person with more people in more occasions, but it was a good time to again share with you.
Yeah, and once again, I'm super honored to have been the person you called and said, "Hey, I'm going to this festival. Would you join me in going to this festival through this adventure?" And I will forever cherish my first time in Europe / at Cannes, at the Cannes Film Festival. As just one of these really eye-opening moments of you feel like there's a community of filmmakers in your area or in your territory, whatever sort of territory you want to cut that up into, but to really be at a festival where film is being celebrated at its highest and business is being done,
and again,
all within a quarter mile of each other, is the energy of that is just contagious. Mm-hmm. And I feel that I came out of it as a more driven producer and director, just seeing how much is out there to be had, to be created, to be shared with people,
right,
through this art.
Yeah, it is nice to know that there's communities that celebrate that so acutely, so grand. Cans to cans, right?
Yes.
So
if you're still watching this,
be
on the lookout for more information for the this year's Mo
Festival.
Yeah,
the 2022 festival is currently accepting submissions, so definitely we are open to it. We've got a nice crop that we've already accepted. We are looking for more good quality films. We're looking to grow our community, and thanks to Edwin, we were able to, at our last festival, step it up and do a live festival. I can't share a lot of the information on what is going to happen with our November festival, but if things line up, there's some exciting things on the horizon for Mo. So stay tuned. Again, another podcast is going to be released featuring 5 a.m. Studio. And I still have a podcast from a while back that I haven't released of a wonderful female stop motion artist from Guadalajara that I'm hoping to get out there. It's going to be a little dated. It was during COVID and it was over a year ago, but it's such a great thing, and maybe I'm going to have a follow-up. So there's still things in store for Mo Stop Mo, festival-wise, podcast-wise. It's been infrequent that I have been doing podcasts because I've been traveling on the road this last year and just kind of working on another project. But look for exciting things on the horizon, especially as our November 2022 festival takes place. So if you're still with us by then and you're still checking out Mo Stop Mo, please, continue.
Submit.
Yeah.
It's a festival that is different than most festivals, which we won't get into right now. Mm-hmm. But submit.
Yeah.
And learn about our festival.
Yeah. So other than that, thank you guys for joining us, and hope this gave some insight of what it was like to have this experience. I hope it didn't sound too self-grandizing. Aggrandizing? Is it
sure. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, just wanted to share what it's like to actually, for the first in-person festival to attend for a film. You do a lot worse than me. So for all the people who didn't think anything was going to come with the cookie cutter, go eat a cookie. Otherwise, thank you guys, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you with some further news about Mo, okay?